Welcome to FYIVT, your inside source for news and in-depth analysis on what's really happening in Vermont. We want to start by saying thank you to all our listeners and supporters. Your continued encouragement fuels our mission to dig deeper and bring light to critical issues that shape our communities. We couldn't do this without you. Today, we're diving into our article titled, "Don't Worry, the State Will Pay for It." For years, Vermonters have been looking to the state government to solve their problems. Heating costs too high? The state will help. Housing crisis? The state will build. Climate change? Don't worry, the state has a plan for that too. But here's the question. How long can this go on? How long can we keep piling on government programs and mandates without asking the hard questions about who pays the bill? Take heating fuel assistance, for example. Every winter, Vermont provides aid to help people heat their homes. But year after year, the funds run out before the winter does. And despite these repeated shortfalls, the state continues to adopt policies, like the clean heat standard, that actually make heating more expensive. You heard that right. Instead of making life easier for Vermonters, the government is raising heating costs while knowing full well they won't have the money to help those most in need. Now, think about this for a moment. Governor Mead, who led Vermont over a century ago, once said, "Vermonters take care of themselves." He was talking about neighbors helping neighbors, not about relying on the government for every challenge. So how did we get from that self-reliant spirit to where we are now? How did we become a state where people turn first to Montpelier instead of their community? One answer lies in policies like the clean heat standard. These regulations increase costs for everyone, from the wealthy to the struggling, all in the name of fighting climate change. According to reports, heating fuel costs in Vermont have been climbing sharply in recent years. A big reason? State policies that favor expensive so-called green solutions over affordability. And the irony? The government has chosen to assist those in need while simultaneously making it harder for them to keep up. By driving up costs for basic necessities like heating, the state creates a cycle where more people need help, but fewer resources are available to help them. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't this what government is supposed to do? Step in when people are struggling? Sure, that sounds noble. But here's the problem. When the state takes over, it pushes out other solutions. Think about it. How much easier would it be for communities to step in and support their own if the state wasn't draining resources through taxes and mandates? And what about those who aren't in financial trouble but still feel the pinch of rising costs? They might want to give to charity or help their neighbors, but with higher heating bills and taxes, their budgets are stretched too thin. This creates a vicious cycle. The more the state takes, the less people can give. The more programs it runs, the more people depend on them. And the more dependency it creates, the less incentive there is for individuals and communities to step up and take care of each other. This isn't just a question of money, it's a question of values. Vermont was built on self-reliance and community support. But today, that culture is being eroded. Stay with me. Let's talk about dependency. When the government steps in to solve every problem, it creates a dangerous cycle. Costs go up, more people need help, and the government promises to fix it by raising costs even higher. Does that sound sustainable to you? Take the legislature, for example. They've had years to address the budget shortfalls in programs like heating fuel assistance. Yet year after year, they seem either unwilling or unable to make the tough decisions to bring their spending habits under control. Instead of cutting back or finding creative solutions, they double down on costly initiatives. Vermont's climate policies are a prime example. Legislators keep pushing forward programs like the Clean Heat Standard, fully aware of the financial strain they're putting on families. Here's the kicker. They're doing this despite knowing they won't have the funds to help everyone who gets left behind. It's as if they've decided it's better to push an agenda than to make sure people can afford to stay warm in the winter. But let's not stop there. These policies don't just hurt the poor, they hurt everyone. Rising costs mean middle-income Vermonters are squeezed tighter and tighter. The very people who might have been able to lend a hand to their neighbors are now struggling to make ends meet themselves. And here's where it gets worse. When people can't give, charities and community organizations suffer. That leaves the government as the only option, and we've already seen how unreliable that is. Think about what's being lost. When Vermonters helped each other directly, there was accountability. There was a personal connection. You weren't just giving money, you were building relationships. You were strengthening your community. But when charity is forced, when it's taken out of your paycheck and funneled into government programs, it loses that personal touch. It becomes just another line item in the state budget. As one Vermonter put it, eliminating the personal choice to be charitable has led to people not wanting to be charitable. That's a powerful observation. When giving is no longer voluntary, it's no longer meaningful. So, where does this leave us? With a government that's overextended and underfunded, with a population that's more dependent on the state and less connected to each other. It's a far cry from Governor Meade's Vermont, where neighbors helped neighbors, and charity wasn't mandated by Montpelier. But there's an even bigger warning here. Ben Franklin once said, "When the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic." Think about that for a moment. Are we at that point? So, what's the solution? First, we have to recognize the problem for what it is. Vermont's government has created a culture of dependency, not out of malice, but out of a misguided belief that the state can solve every problem. The truth is, it can't, and it was never meant to. Governor Meade's Vermont was built on the idea that people take care of themselves and each other. That doesn't mean ignoring those in need. It means finding solutions that empower, not weaken, individuals and communities. But today, that spirit is being crushed under the weight of government programs and mandates. Heating costs are just one example. The legislature's climate policies may have good intentions, but good intentions don't pay the bills. They don't keep families warm, and they certainly don't foster the kind of independence Vermonters once prided themselves on. What if we flipped the script? What if we reduced the government's role and gave that responsibility back to the people? Imagine this. Fewer taxes and lower costs of living, leaving more money in the hands of individuals and families. Imagine communities stepping up, as they once did, to support their neighbors, not because they're forced to, but because they want to. Imagine a Vermont where charities thrive, where people give freely and generously, and where every dollar spent has a direct impact. That's what real charity looks like. It's personal, it's meaningful, it builds connections and strengthens communities. Now, let's be honest. Getting there won't be easy. The state has spent decades entrenching itself in every aspect of our lives. It won't pull back without a fight. But here's the good news. Vermonters have done this before. We've faced challenges, and we've risen to meet them. It's in our DNA. The question is, do we still have the will to do it? Can we say no to dependency and yes to responsibility? Can we push back against government overreach and reclaim the self-reliance that made Vermont strong in the first place? Here's one thing to remember. Every dollar the state takes is a dollar that can't go to a neighbor in need. Every program it mandates is another step away from true community, and every promise it makes but can't keep only deepens the cycle of dependency. It's time to break that cycle. Vermont's future doesn't have to be one of higher costs and greater dependency. It can be one of lower taxes, stronger communities, and real freedom. But it starts with us. It starts with asking hard questions, like, is the state helping, or is it holding us back? Are we solving problems, or are we creating new ones? And it starts with remembering the words of Governor Meade. Vermonters take care of themselves. That's the Vermont we should all be working toward. Not a state that promises to pay for everything, but a community that knows how to stand on its own 2 feet. So what do you think? Is it time to reclaim that Vermont? Freedom is the foundation of prosperity. Stay informed, stay vocal, and most importantly, stay free. Thank you for listening to this episode of FYIVT. To read the full article and explore more on what's happening in Vermont and how the state works, visit us at FYIVT.com. We appreciate your support and look forward to continuing to bring you important perspectives on Vermont's most pressing issues. Until next time.